In the last lesson, we brought in some more assets from Fab Asset Library, and then we placed those assets over the surface to give the surface a little bit of variation and detail. In this lesson, we're going to download a few foliage assets from Fab Library, and then we're going to paint some foliage around these assets. Okay, so let's begin. I'm going to go into Fab Asset Library, select 3D, Nature and Plants, and then I'm going to go into Plants. I'm going to type in Quixel once again. And then it's going to show us a lot of foliage asset, and what I'm looking for in here is a sort of dry wild grass. So let's scroll down, something like this. So let's select this one, and I'm going to add this thing to the project. I'm going to save everything, and let's go back to Fab, and let's look for a few more assets. I also like this one, dead shrubs. I'm going to add this to the project. I'm going to save everything. I'm going to go back into Fab. Let's look for one more asset, and then we'll start painting the foliage, okay? I think I like this one as well. Yeah, this one looks good as well. Let's add this to the project. And I'm going to save everything. Okay, now as you can see, inside this Megascans folder, we have a new folder called as plants. And inside this plants folder, we have 3 different folders for 3 different foliage packs. So what I'm going to do in here is to simply just select this plants folder. Okay, enable the static mesh filter. Now it's going to show me all the foliage static meshes inside this folder. And now I'm going to open this drop down menu. And it's going to show us this foliage menu. I'm going to select all of them. I'm going to select all of these assets, and I'm going to just drag them and drop them in here. Make sure all of these assets are static meshes. I'm going to now select all of them. If I'll enlarge this window, you can see in here we have various settings that we can tweak for our foliage assets. Okay. So first of all, I'm going to just enlarge this window. And as you can see, when you'll open the foliage mode, just like the one in the landscape mode, we have this semi-sphere that we can use to paint foliage over different assets, okay? So what I'm going to do in here is to simply just make sure all of these assets are selected, and let's discuss a few settings. Most of these settings are pretty self-explanatory, but let's quickly go over a few of them, okay? First up in here, you can see we have this density. We can, by tweaking this number, we can control how dense the patch of the grass will actually be. For example, right now, if I paint this, let me try this thing here. If I paint this by pressing my left mouse button over this surface, you can see we have this grass in here. But if I'll bring this number down to, let's say 20, and paint somewhere around here, you can see now the foliage is not very dense, okay? Similarly, we have another option in here called as radius, and this controls the distance between the foliage instances, okay? For example, if I type in 100 in here, and as you can see right now, there is not much of a distance between these foliage instances, okay? But if I'll increase this number to, let's say 50, and paint this thing over here, you're going to see that these grass patches are now a little bit further apart, okay? I'm going to increase this number to 200 to show you a noticeable difference. Let's paint another patch in here. And now, as you can see, the distance between the foliage instances is even bigger. So yeah, another very useful setting in here is the scaling. By tweaking the setting, we can control the scale of the foliage, okay? For example, right now the scale is pretty uniform, but we can also type in the minimum and maximum value of the scaling. And if I increase this to, let's say 5, and paint a patch of foliage in here, you're going to see that we have some very small and very large instances of these patches. You can also change this to free, and then you can control the scaling value of the foliage on all 3 axes. We have some other settings as well, but for now, for the most part, that is all you need to know. So what I'm going to do in here is to simply just press and hold Shift on the keyboard to erase all the grass. And before I actually paint some foliage on these surfaces, there are a couple of more settings in here. In here, you can see we have the size of the brush. We can tweak the size of the semisphere. For example, if I bring this down to, let's say, 50, you can see we have a much smaller brush in here, okay? Similarly, we have paint density in here as well, which is going to control how dense you actually want the foliage to be. So let's now paint these foliage assets. I'm going to split this window, and uh, what I'm going to do in here is to paint these foliage assets around these objects, okay? So let's enlarge the camera preview, and I'm also going to bring this window here. There we go. I don't think I need this landscape anymore, so let's just delete it. I'm gonna go in here. I'm gonna go into my outliner and go into environment lights and select the landscape and delete it. Yeah. So let's now paint on these assets. I'm gonna open my sequencer. Okay, and let's paint around this asset. Let's see which one it is. I think it's this one. Yeah. So I'm just going to get closer to this asset, and yeah, right now the foliage is just too dense, and I think I should also bring down the size of the brush. So let's bring this thing down to, let's say, 20, and I'm gonna change the paint density to 0.2, and I'm also going to change this to uniform. I think 0.1 is fine, and the maximum value should be 1. I'm gonna decrease the density to, let's say, 50, and I'm gonna reset the radius because the radius is just fine where it is. So let's now bring this window here and paint some foliage, okay? I'm just simply gonna use my left mouse button to just gradually paint around this asset. Let's save everything. And now that I've painted the basic layer of grass, what I'm gonna do in here is to go back to foliage settings and increase the size of the foliage assets, okay? And then I'm gonna place just a little bit of more grass in here and then move on to the next asset. Let's open these settings. I'm gonna go down in here and type in, let's say, 0.5. I'm gonna increase this number to 2. I'm gonna bring down the density to 25. And let's see. Let me bring this window here. And I'm just gonna paint a little bit more foliage in here, okay? Maybe I should increase the size a little bit more. I'm gonna set the minimum size to 1 and let's see. Yeah, now I think it's a little bit better. There we go. I paint just a little bit more in this area and that is pretty much it, okay? Just a little bit more in here as well. Okay. And let's see. I'm gonna go in here, change this to 2, change this to 3, set the minimum to 2, maximum to 3, and let's see. There we go. Yeah, this is exactly what I was looking for. So let me just bring this window in here and let's see how this thing looks like in the camera preview. Yeah, I think it's looking good. I know that these cross patches are not that obvious in the camera preview, but at this point they're just kind of working in the subconscious level. Okay. So what I'm gonna do in here is to, let's see, move ahead on the sequencer, and I think we should paint some foliage in here as well. So I'm gonna move back here and let's see which asset it is. I think it's this one. There we go. So I'm gonna get closer to this asset and paint a little bit of foliage in here. Okay, as you can see, it looks really good. Just make sure that you don't overkill this. And let's see. Um, yeah, okay. I'm gonna paint a little bit of foliage here. Perhaps that's a little bit too much. Let's see. Yeah, this looks good. Just a little bit here, a little bit here as well. That's probably a little bit too dense, so I'm just gonna erase this thing a little bit. Yeah, I think it looks good. Um, let's see. I think I think that's perhaps a little bit too much. So there we go. Yeah, now it looks good. Okay. Uh, let's open the foliage settings, and I'm gonna type in 0.1 for the minimum value, and for the maximum, I'm gonna change this to 2. I'm gonna bring this window in here, and let's now paint a little bit of foliage around this edge. No, I think that's still probably a little bit too much in size. So let's bring the maximum value down. Oops. And let's paint some foliage in here. Yeah, I think I should increase the intensity. Let's bring this thing up to 50. And I'm gonna paint a little bit of foliage in here just to give this thing a little bit of subtle effect. Nothing too dense, just a little bit of subtle effect. Maybe just a little bit around here. Yeah, I think it looks pretty good. Let's move ahead on the sequencer and let's see how this thing looks like from here. Perhaps just a little bit more foliage in here. That's a little bit too much. I'm gonna erase this thing right here and paint a little bit of foliage in here. And that is pretty much it. Okay. Yeah, I think it looks good. Let's move ahead on the sequencer and let's see. Yeah, let's now paint around this asset. I'm gonna get closer to this asset and let's see what we can do in here. Perhaps I'm gonna have to increase the size of the foliage. Let's first increase the density to, let's say, 100. And paint this thing around here. Perhaps I should bring this thing down here, or maybe bring this window in here. And let's now paint the foliage. Okay. So yeah, I think this looks good. Perhaps a little bit of foliage around here. Okay. Let's move ahead on the sequencer, and I think I should paint on this asset as well. But which one is it? Yeah, it's this one. So I'm just gonna simply paint on this asset as well. Okay. Maybe a little bit here as well. Let's move ahead on the sequencer, and just a little bit of foliage around here. Yeah, I think it looks good. Let's see. Maybe just a little bit over here. And yeah, I think it looks pretty good. Okay, next up I have this asset in here. Perhaps I'm gonna have to increase the scale for this one. Maybe let's say 1.5. And let's paint this foliage in here. So far, so good. Okay. Yeah. Let's see what we can do about this one in here. It's there. To be honest, I can't see it very clearly. This error is getting in the way, so I'm just gonna bring this window in here. Let's increase the scale. I'm gonna change this to 1 and change this to, let's say, 3. Okay. I'm gonna do the same thing with this one as well. Uh, yeah, let's just paint a few instances in here. Oops. There we go. Perhaps that's a little bit too much. I'm gonna have to erase this thing in here. Oops. I'm gonna erase this. Okay. There we go. And yeah, now it looks good. Let's move this playhead. I'm going to increase the density to, let's say, 70. Okay, there we go. Let's bring down the density to 40. Finally, we have one more asset. So let's set this number to 0.1 and let's see what happens. Yeah, I think it looks good. Let's see if we have any remaining asset. I think we have one in here. Where is this asset? Um, I think it's somewhere. I'm not sure if it's visible in the camera preview. Let's adjust these windows and have a look at this again. Yeah, I think I found it. There it is. Uh, right here. Okay. Let's paint some foliage in here. Okay, I'm gonna have to increase the density to 150. And let's paint in this area. I'm gonna move this window here. Yeah, maybe a little bit more foliage around here. Perhaps that's a little bit too much. Perhaps I don't need it here, but maybe just a little bit around here, okay? Okay. I'm gonna erase this one and maybe just a little bit of foliage here. Yeah, okay. So it looks good. And let's adjust this window and I'm gonna move the playhead. Perhaps that's a little bit too much. So I'm gonna just go in here and erase it right here. Okay. The cross is kind of penetrating the stone. So let's erase a few instances in here. Yeah, we have some problems in here as well. So I'm just gonna get rid of them. Maybe we have one in here as well. Uh, there we go. Yeah, let's see how this thing looks like right now. Yeah, I think looks good. Okay. Let's save everything. And I'm gonna now go back into the selection mode. Let's bring in the outliner and let me show you the difference. I'm gonna close all these folders and I'm gonna close this one as well. And as you can see, we now have this new blueprint actor in here. And if I hide this actor, you can see we don't have any grass in our scene. Let me enlarge this window. But if I'll enable this foliage actor, you can see now we have a lot of detail in the scene. Okay. Just make sure you don't overkill this and keep the density as low as possible. Okay. So yes, that's it for this lesson. And in the next lesson, we're going to discuss the camera settings. So I'll see you guys in the next one.